We're going to get you a preview of the upcoming series between the Padres and the Toronto Blue Jays, as we are now joined by the phenomenal broadcaster who has had an illustrious career. He is broadcasting now for the Toronto Blue Jays. He is their lead play-by-play man. He has done that for a long time and then took a little bit of a break, went back, did some ES stuff for ESPN. He was the broadcaster for Sunday Night Baseball. He continues to do college basketball for ESPN. His name is Dan Shulman. He joins me on the Braden Show. Dan, what's going on? How's your Tuesday going?
Well, thank you for all that, Braden. I really appreciate that. You just made my Tuesday a little better saying all those nice things. So I appreciate it. But all is good. We had an off day yesterday. And as you know, baseball announcers and players treasure off days. So recharge the batteries and back at it tonight.
Well, Dan, we've had a handful of broadcasters on our show. I do play-by-play at the University of San Diego. I like to pick the brains a little bit of the play-by-play men that have done such a great job before we break down the team. You've had a great career. What is the best advice you would give a young up-and-coming play-by-play man? I know your son is one of those as well, but what kind of advice would you give to anybody that's in our audience that's looking up to potentially be a play-by-play broadcaster?
So I give the same two bits of advice. I get asked some variation of this a fair bit. One is don't get into this unless you're willing to work hard. And I'm sure you work very hard, but like if somebody's 17 years old and boy, that looks like the coolest job and I want to do that, awesome, but it's a lot of work. It's, as you know, you're preparing for your team and the other team, or like when I'm at ESPN, you're preparing for two teams who aren't, quote, your team. It's a lot of work, a lot of flying around, a lot of early flights or late flights. And it takes a lot of, I believe it takes a lot of preparation. I really admire those who put a lot of work in, and I believe I can watch another game and tell who's putting the work in. So that would be one. The second one would be think of the crew that you work with just like a team, whether it's a baseball team, basketball team, doesn't matter. They're all your teammates. The analyst, the reporter, the producer, the director, the camera people, the tape people, the audio people, et cetera, et cetera. They're all your teammates, and it takes a lot of people to put a good show on the air. So at the end of the day, or even at the beginning of the day, I'm not thinking about, boy, how can I make myself look good or anything like that. I'm thinking about how can we have a good show, and I think being a good team is very important.
Dan Shulman, Blue Jays broadcasters, going to give us a preview of the upcoming series between the Padres and the Blue Jays from the side of the Blue Jays. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you just from a play-by-play sense, and that's, when you have to go into non-sports news during a broadcast, you had a moment in time where you had to sit on and then break the news as you were on Sunday Night Baseball when the death of Osama bin Laden happened. How were you able to go through that? And as a broadcaster, what was that moment like for you in your career?
Honestly, it was probably the trickiest night of my career on a number of levels. So, first of all, I'm not really trained in news. I'm trained in sports.
Right.
Second of all, I'm Canadian, and I wanted to be incredibly respectful and careful with my words. I just didn't want to say the wrong thing. So I played it very, very safe. If you go back and listen to it, not that you should, and not that I have in many years, I played it incredibly safe, just reported the news. So here's what happened. Bobby Valentine was part of our Sunday night crew. I was working with Bobby and Oral Hershiser. Bobby was sitting beside me and nudged me with his elbow and showed me his phone, showed me a text on his phone. And the whole text was, "We got bin Laden." And I looked at him and he looked at me, and like, I'm sure we both had wide eyes, but like the Phillies are batting in the middle of the seventh inning or whatever it is. It was Mets and Phillies in Philadelphia. So I go on talkback, which you know what that is, so I can talk to the truck without it going out over the air. And I said, "Hey guys, anybody got anything on the bin Laden story I just saw?" And I got an answer back, "Yes, don't say anything, we're corroborating." Meanwhile, another pitch is thrown or a ball's put in play. Like the game is still going on. And it's, this is not in the play-by-play handbook. So we sat on it for a while, and then I gave what I knew. And I had help from the truck. Again, they were, through their sources, I'm trying to balance this and calling the game at the same time. So I just said, hey, ABC News is reporting because ABC and ESPN are all in the Disney family. So ABC News is reporting, et cetera, et cetera. Here's what we know, and on we go. And then we get back to the baseball game. And then within minutes, maybe not even minutes, everybody's got a phone, right? Everybody knows. And now the ballpark is going, the buzz in the ballpark is unbelievable. People are telling each other, and a USA chant breaks out. And now everybody, but the players know, because the players are on the field or in the dugout, and they don't know what's going on. And that became a story. And eventually, of course, they found out from camera people or security guards or ushers or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, because it's baseball, that game, I think, went 13 innings or something like that. So we were on the air for a couple of hours. But it was, to be in all honesty, Braden, I think I could have done better than I did, but I played it incredibly safe. Just wanted to give the information, and how you juggle that in a baseball game, I still don't know, but we did the best we could.
Yeah, truly remarkable, and what an interesting experience that was. Dan Shulman, Blue Jays broadcaster, joining us on the Braden Soprenet Show. Thanks again for enlightening us on a little bit of the broadcasting side. Let's talk about the Blue Jays. Blue Jays have won 6 of the last 10 games. What has been the biggest factor for them in their recent upswing?
Well, for the first 6 of those 10, I think they won 5 of them. They started hitting. Like overall, this team's been a little disappointing this year. They've been right in games. Like they just played the Tigers 3 one-run games, but they lost 2 of them. It's one of those. I think their record's 22-24, if I'm not mistaken. And it's one of those. Like every team, you remember the ones that got away more than the ones that you stole. But it feels like they should be a little bit better than they are. Not a ton better. This is not the same team from 21 and 22 that hit like crazy and had so much young talent. They're not as talented now. Some guys are older in key spots, like their starting rotation. Guerrero and Bichette are still Guerrero and Bichette. But this is a team, I think, that if they play well, can be a playoff team, but I don't think this is the same level of talent they had a few years ago. So what's going better lately is for several games, they finally started hitting. I mean, they had like 18 games in a row where they didn't score more than 4 runs, something like that. Bichette has gotten hot. Dalton Varsho's come off the IL. He had shoulder surgery in September, so he missed the first month this year, and he's hit 6 home runs in 12 games, which they have desperately needed. And then some of their Alejandro Kirk is swinging the bat very well. And even like a complimentary guy like Ernie Clement is swinging the bat very well. Some guys have started swinging it better. But in some of these games, the hitting was great, and they didn't get a good start from their pitcher. Or the hitting was great, and the starting pitcher was good, and then the bullpen blew up. They've had trouble getting everything on the same page at the same time. It's all there, but they've got to kind of get it all going at once if they're going to win more than they lose this year.
Dan Shulman, Toronto Blue Jays play-by-play broadcaster, joining us on the Braden Soprenet Show. Not too long ago, they were able to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to sign an extension. The Blue Jays have kind of been the runner-up for a lot of different signings in free agency. How important is it for the Blue Jays, or how important was it for the Blue Jays to make sure Vlad Guerrero Jr. stays with the organization for an extended period of time?
Yeah, I think they kind of had to do it. And as you know, they paid a lot to get it done. 14 years and $500 million. And, that's been compared in some circles to the Tatis contract, right? Which I think was 14 and 340, if I'm not mistaken. Now, there's a little inflation there because things always go up. And is this year, what year is this for Tatis? Of the 14-3, maybe
like
4?
3 or 4.
Like but yeah, so, a little inflation. But listen, Tatis is a right fielder. Vladdy's a first baseman. So, in that sense, you got to give Tatis a little bit of an edge. So, but they kind of had to get it done. As you said, they went after a number of high profile guys who they didn't get. The only thing I will say to that is, like, just about every team didn't get those guys, right? It's just that the Blue Jays seemed to finish second or third a lot. But, they were in on Ohtani. They were definitely in on Roki Sasaki without question. And they have signed some guys. I mean, George Springer and Kevin Gausman and Anthony Santander, they've got a big payroll. They spent $260 million this year, which is by far the most they've ever spent. But I think they needed to get Guerrero done because they didn't have anybody remotely close in the system who could provide that kind of thump going forward. Like the question was, okay, if you don't sign him, then what? Who's hitting, whether it's second, third, whatever, who's hitting in the middle of the order next year? And the fan base, I think, has been pretty grumpy the last couple of years. A bad year last year, and then a couple of years before that, they make the playoffs, but they go out in 2 games both times. And I mean, in painful fashion, like stuff you couldn't dream up if you were trying to. So I think ownership made a decision that they probably went well beyond their comfort zone and said, we got to sign him, and they did. So whether Bichette gets signed is another story. He's up at the end of the year as well. I've always kind of put the two of them in a slightly different category. It's always felt like Guerrero, truly would be happy to spend his entire career in Toronto, if the contract was right and if the team looked like a winner. And Bichette may be the same, but Bo's always felt a little bit more like a bet on yourself kind of guy. And let's see. So right now, relative, I think, to their ceilings, Bichette's actually having the better year. He's swinging it really well right now. Vladdy has taken a lot of walks and hitting for a decent average, but they need the pop. They need more than 5 home runs in 46 games. Like if this team, another one of the ifs, there's a few ifs. If this team's going to be a playoff team, he's got to drive in 100 plus. He's got to be a thumper like he was last year.
Dan, you kind of answered. My next question was going to be about the fan base. I mean, you mentioned in 2021, very young team, high ceiling. It looked like the future was really bright for the Toronto Blue Jays, and then it kind of flipped the last couple of years. I mean, you mentioned them being a little disgruntled. I mean, how's the support been in terms of what they've done, move wise during the off seasons and how they've been able to construct this team? Again, you mentioned a little disgruntled, but what's the patience level at right now with this fan base?
So the off season after 22, before 23, it feels like the front office decided they were too imbalanced, too right-hand hitting, too focused on the offense, not enough on the defense and the base running and the fundamentals. So Teoscar Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., both of whom you're very familiar with, were both traded away that offseason. So, and they changed the look of the team. Kevin Kiermaier came in and had a very good year. Brandon Belt came in, but the team just felt all of a sudden they struggled to score runs. The defense was really good, but they struggled to score runs. And now, after a couple of years of that, I think they're trying to swing back the pendulum into the middle a little bit more. They're still a very good defensive team, but they went out looking for more offense. Anthony Santander was almost a guy they had to have. Like there wasn't that much on the free agent market this year. They got him. Unfortunately, he's hitting 187. Like he's really struggling. The one move that surprised me in the offseason was they picked up Andres Jimenez from Cleveland, a great defensive second baseman, but not a good hitter. And he's on the IL right now. He'll be back soon. He's been great defensively, but hasn't hit well. So that to me is a bit of an issue that they went in that direction. And hopefully he can turn it around and swing the bats better. But the fans, they really got angry after the 22 season into 23 when the team just didn't hit as much. And then last year it went down again and they hit even less. So this offseason, I think, was good. Getting Santander. I mean, Jimenez will help. I'm just not sure if he's going to help offensively. Jeff Hoffman at the back of the bullpen. They bring back Jimmy Garcia. And the Max Scherzer one hasn't worked out yet because he's been hurt. But like they had a good offseason. They didn't get Soto, but they brought in some guys who will help. But I think the fans are still kind of grumpy with the front office. A bad crowd for the Jays is kind of 22 to 24,000. A good crowd, they get 40. They fill it up. The capacity is just over 40. We're lucky. It's a big city and it's a big country, and a lot of people come to Toronto from all over Canada to watch the Blue Jays play, and we see a ton of them in Seattle and Minnesota and Cleveland as well. And I just want for the fans that they can turn this into a winner. You go back to 2021, as you talked about. They were a team that almost everybody was betting on to win a World Series in the next few years. And obviously it hasn't happened. They haven't even won a playoff game. They've been in, but they haven't won a game.
Dan, last thing I got for you, starting pitcher tonight, Chris Bassett. What should Padres fans expect to see out of Bassett as he twirls it against our starting 9?
Kitchen sink, sinker, cutter, splitter, and then a little bit of everything else. 6 or 7 pitch guy. Some people say 8, but He's kind of ditched a couple. He does not throw hard. He'll top out at 92, but he is very smart, very crafty. If he is on the edges, up, down, left, right, in, out, changing speeds, keeping them off balance, he can be great. I think he brings like a 3.16 ERA into his start here tonight. If he makes mistakes, he'll get hit more than most because he doesn't have the power. He doesn't have the velocity. Very slow curveball, like 70 miles an hour. It might be the slowest curveball in baseball, and he'll get some really funny swings on it. But a guy who knows what he's doing out there, and if he is on, all of a sudden, it's through 6 innings, and everybody's like, "Man, I really should have got that guy. I felt pretty good at the plate," and everybody's 0 for 3. He can do that when he's hitting the corners.
Dan, I really appreciate your time. I know you got get prepared for this big series. I know you've probably already done a lot of that preparation. Thanks again for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
You got it, Braden. All the best.
Thanks to Dan Shulman joining us on the Braden Soprenet Show.